She was about to lose everything: her job, her mother's only lifeline, her fragile grip on stability. But when Clara Rios stepped between a terrified child and a billionaire's cruelty, she made a choice that would pull her into a world where loyalty was currency and one act of courage could rewrite her entire destiny. The chandeliers of Augustino's cast golden light across white tablecloths and crystal stemware, but Clara Rios barely noticed the opulence anymore. After 3 years working Chicago's most exclusive restaurant, she'd learned that money didn't guarantee manners. She balanced a tray of champagne flutes on her shoulder, navigating between tables where deals worth millions were brokered over $40 appetizers. Her feet ached in the required black heels, and her lower back protested the constant movement. But Clara had become an expert at hiding discomfort behind a professional smile. This job paid twice what she could make anywhere else, and with her mother's mounting medical bills, she couldn't afford to lose it. Table 4 needs their second bottle of Chateau Margaux, Tony the sommelier whispered as she passed, and the couple at 6 are getting impatient about their entrees. Clara nodded, mentally reorganizing her priorities. Friday nights at Augustino's were always chaos wrapped in silk and diamonds, but she'd learned to dance through it with grace. The wealthy patrons expected perfection, and she'd trained herself to deliver it without breaking stride. Table 7 caught her attention as she moved through the dining room, not because of the reserved sign or the VIP placard that marked it as special, but because of the little girl sitting alone. The child couldn't have been more than 8, with dark hair pulled into careful braids that someone had clearly spent time perfecting. She wore a navy dress with white trim, appropriate for the restaurant's dress code, but her entire focus was on the sketch pad in front of her. Clara watched as the girl's small hand moved across the page, completely absorbed in whatever she was creating. In a room full of adults pretending to be important, negotiating deals and flaunting wealth, here was someone genuinely lost in the pure act of creation. It made Clara smile despite her exhaustion. She remembered being that age, drawing in the margins of her school notebooks, imagining worlds beyond the cramped apartment she shared with her mother. Before her father left, before the bills piled up, before reality taught her that dreams were luxuries people like her couldn't afford. Clara was refilling water glasses at table 9, listening with half an ear to two bankers debate cryptocurrency regulations, when she heard it, a voice that cut through the restaurant's refined murmur like broken glass. Move. Now. The words weren't loud, but they carried the kind of entitled authority that expected immediate obedience. Clara's shoulders tensed instinctively as she turned toward the source. A man in a charcoal suit loomed over table 7, his hand already gripping the back of the chair where the little girl sat. Clara recognized him immediately. Robert Garcia. His face had been plastered across financial magazines in the break room for months, always accompanied by breathless articles about his real estate empire. Garcia Industries had reshaped half of downtown Chicago, buying up properties and transforming neighborhoods, which usually meant displacing the people who'd lived there for generations. Robert's features were sharp and angular, handsome in the way of men who could afford personal trainers and expensive skincare routines. But right now, his expression was twisted with irritation, and he looked anything but attractive. He looked cruel. "This is my table," Robert said, his voice dripping with impatience. "I have a reservation." The little girl, Megan, according to the reservation list Clara had reviewed at the start of her shift, looked up with wide, startled eyes. Her fingers clutched her sketch pad protectively against her chest. "My papa is coming back. He just went to take a phone call." "I don't care about your papa." Robert's dismissal was absolute, as if the child's words were nothing more than annoying background noise. "This table was promised to me. Do you know who I am?" Clara felt something tighten in her chest, a familiar anger that she usually kept carefully controlled. She'd seen this before. Powerful men who believed the world existed solely to accommodate them, who never considered that other people might matter, might have feelings, might deserve basic respect. Usually, she kept her head down. Waitresses who caused scenes didn't keep their jobs, and she needed this job desperately. Her mother's latest hospital bill sat on their kitchen counter at home, a reminder that one wrong move could cost them everything. But watching this millionaire bully, a child crossed a line Clara couldn't ignore, no matter the consequences. She set down her water pitcher with deliberate care, took a breath to steady herself, and walked over. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral, professional. "Excuse me, sir, is there a problem?" Robert barely glanced at her as if she were part of the furniture. "Yes, this child is in my seat." Clara felt the weight of attention shifting their way. Other diners were starting to notice the disturbance, their conversations trailing off as they turned to watch. In the kitchen doorway, she could see her manager, Vincent, emerging with a panicked expression that promised nothing good. "Actually," Clara said, keeping her voice level and calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system, "Table 7 has been reserved for the evening. The party arrived 20 minutes ago." She crouched down to Megan's eye level, deliberately positioning her body between the girl and Robert. "You're okay, sweetheart. Your dad will be right back." Megan's lower lip trembled slightly, but she nodded, her grip on the sketch pad relaxing just a fraction. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" Robert's face flushed, his voice rising. Several nearby tables had abandoned all pretense of their own conversations now, openly staring at the confrontation. "I could buy this restaurant with my pocket change. I could have you fired with one phone call." Clara stood slowly, straightening to her full height. 5'6" in her work shoes, which meant Robert still towered over her. But she'd grown up in neighborhoods where backing down meant getting walked on forever, where showing weakness invited predators. She'd learned early that sometimes you had to stand your ground, even when the odds were against you. "You could do a lot of things, Mr. Garcia," she said quietly, meeting his eyes directly. "But right now, you're going to step away from this child and let me seat you at another table. We have several available that would be perfect for you." "I don't want another table." Each word came out clipped and hard. "I want this table." And she was here first. The restaurant had gone completely quiet now. Clara could feel eyes on them from every direction. Other diners, the host stand, the busboys frozen in mid-service. Vincent was hurrying toward them, his face pale, probably running through scenarios of how to handle this without losing either a wealthy patron or facing a discrimination lawsuit. This was it. Clara realized with sudden, crystalline clarity that she was about to lose everything over a principle. Robert Garcia had the power to make good on his threats. One call to Augustino himself, and she'd be blacklisted from every decent restaurant in Chicago. But looking at Megan's frightened face, at the way the little girl's shoulders had hunched protectively over her artwork, Clara couldn't bring herself to care about the consequences. Then a voice, smooth as aged whiskey and twice as dangerous, cut through the tension like a blade. "Is there a problem with my daughter's seating arrangement?" Clara turned to see a man approaching table 7, and the restaurant's atmosphere shifted instantly. He moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself, tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp features that might have been carved from marble. His dark hair was swept back from his forehead, showing touches of silver at the temples that only added to his commanding presence. His suit was immaculate, clearly custom-tailored, and probably cost more than Clara made in 6 months. But it wasn't the expensive clothing that commanded attention. It was something else entirely. An aura of controlled power that made everyone in the room straighten unconsciously. Behind him, Clara noticed two men in dark suits hanging back near the entrance. Security. They were trying to be unobtrusive, but she recognized the way they scanned the room constantly, the way their hands hovered near their jackets. She'd seen enough in Chicago to know what that meant. This had to be Megan's father, and Clara had worked at Augustino's long enough to recognize when Chicago's underworld walked through the door. Robert Garcia's bluster faltered for just a second, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face before arrogance reasserted itself. "Your daughter was occupying my table. I have a standing arrangement with the owner." "Your table." The Mafia boss repeated the words slowly, as if tasting something rotten. He moved to stand beside Clara, and she felt the shift in power like a physical force, the air itself seeming to compress with tension. "Funny. I don't see your name on the reservation." Up close, Clara could see the fine details that marked him as different from the other wealthy men who frequented Agostino's. There was a small scar along his jawline, faded but visible. His knuckles showed the slight callousing of someone who'd done more than sign contracts with his hands, and his eyes, dark and assessing, held a coldness that made Robert's corporate ruthlessness look like child's play. I have an understanding with Augustino, Robert began, but the mafia boss cut him off with a slight gesture, nothing more than a raised finger, and Robert's words died in his throat. Augustino is a personal friend of mine. The words were spoken conversationally, never rising above a normal speaking volume, but everyone in the restaurant was listening. We've known each other for 20 years. I don't recall him mentioning you had privileges that superseded confirmed reservations, or the right to intimidate children. He paused, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. And their defenders. Clara's breath caught. Their defenders. He'd included her in that statement, acknowledged what she'd done. She could feel her hands trembling slightly at her sides and clasped them together to hide it. Robert's jaw clenched, his eyes darting between the mafia boss and Clara. She could see him calculating, weighing his pride against whatever he knew or had heard about the man in front of him. Chicago's power structure was complicated. Corporate wealth was one thing, but there were other forms of power that operated in the shadows, older and more dangerous. I didn't realize this was your table, Robert finally said, the words coming out stiff and resentful. My apologies for the confusion. I don't think the confusion was yours alone. The mafia boss gestured toward Clara, and she felt her pulse quicken as his attention focused on her. This young woman stood up for my daughter when she had no reason to accept basic human decency. Something you seem to have misplaced somewhere between your first and second billion. A few suppressed sounds of amusement rippled through the nearby tables. Robert's face darkened. The mafia boss turned to face Robert fully now, and his smile was the most terrifying thing Clara had ever seen. Perfectly polite, completely controlled, and absolutely merciless. I think you owe her an apology, don't you? The restaurant held its breath. Clara could hear the faint clinking of silverware from the kitchen, the distant hum of conversation from the bar area, but the dining room itself had gone silent as a church. Robert's face went through several shades of red, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. For a moment, Clara thought he might refuse, might let his ego override his survival instinct. But then his gaze flickered to the two security men by the door, to the mafia boss's unwavering stare, and something in him crumbled. I apologize. Oh, he forced out, each word clearly painful. I was out of line. Yes, the mafia boss agreed simply. You were. He glanced toward the host stand, where Vincent stood frozen with a leather-bound reservation book clutched to his chest. I believe table 12 is available. The one by the kitchen. I'm sure someone of Mr. Garcia's stature won't mind the foot traffic. The proximity to the staff entrance. The view of the dish station. It was a dismissal and a humiliation wrapped in courtesy. Table 12 was where they seated walk-ins who hadn't made reservations, people they were doing a favor by accommodating at all. For someone like Robert Garcia, being relegated there was a public statement of diminished status. Robert's mouth opened, then closed. He looked like he wanted to argue to reassert his importance, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, he turned on his heel and stalked toward table 12, his shoulders rigid with suppressed fury. Clara's knees felt weak. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the confrontation was ebbing, leaving her shaky and uncertain. Vincent appeared at her elbow, his face a mixture of relief and anxiety. Clara, perhaps you should take a break, he began. But the mafia boss held up one hand, and Vincent's words cut off mid-sentence. She stays, the mafia boss said simply. It wasn't a request. Vincent nodded rapidly, backing away with the nervous energy of someone who'd just avoided disaster. Clara watched him retreat, wondering if she should feel grateful or terrified. The mafia boss turned to her, and his expression softened in a way that seemed impossible given what she'd just witnessed. My daughter would like you to serve our table tonight if you're willing. He glanced down at Megan, who was looking up at Clara with something like adoration. and I'd like to know the name of the person who defended her. Clara swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. Clara Rios, sir. Clara. He tested the name, then smiled. It transformed his face, making him look younger, almost approachable. Thank you for protecting my daughter. Truly. He reached into his jacket, Clara tensed involuntarily, and pulled out a business card. Heavy cardstock, cream-colored, with minimal text. Just a name and a phone number. No company, no title. When your shift ends, he continued, I'd like to speak with you about a job opportunity. Clara stared at the card, her mind racing. A job opportunity. From a man who was clearly connected to Chicago's underworld, who could make a millionaire CEO apologize with nothing more than a look and a few words. Every instinct she'd developed growing up in rough neighborhoods screamed that this was dangerous, that accepting anything from this man would come with strings attached. But another part of her, the part that was tired of struggling, tired of watching her mother's health deteriorate because they couldn't afford better treatment, tired of bowing and scraping to entitled customers who treated her like furniture, that part was desperately curious. Sir, she started, not sure how to finish. No pressure, he said, and his voice was gentle now, almost kind. But people who do the right thing when it costs them something are exactly the kind of people I need working for me. He glanced at Megan again, and the tenderness in his expression was unmistakable. My daughter is an excellent judge of character. She told me before I even reached the table that you had a kind heart. I trust her instincts more than anyone's. Megan nodded enthusiastically, her earlier fear completely forgotten. You were really brave, she said to Clara, her voice high and clear. That man was scary, but you weren't afraid. Clara crouched down again, meeting Megan's eyes. I was a little afraid, she admitted honestly. But sometimes we have to be brave even when we're scared, especially to help people who need it. That's what Papa always says. Megan beamed, then held up her sketch pad. Look, I was drawing the restaurant. Do you want to see? Clara took the offered sketch pad, genuinely impressed by what she saw. The drawing showed Augustino's dining room in surprising detail. The chandeliers, the tables, even some of the other diners rendered in quick, confident strokes. The girl had real talent. This is beautiful, Megan, Clara said sincerely. You're a really good artist. Papa says I get it from my mother. Megan's voice dropped slightly, and Clara caught a flicker of something, grief maybe, crossed the Mafia boss's face before his expression smoothed again. Clara straightened, still holding the business card. She met the Mafia boss's eyes, trying to read what was behind them. Was this genuine gratitude, or something more calculated? Was he the kind of man who helped people out of genuine appreciation, or did every gesture come with an invisible price tag? I'll think about it, she said finally, tucking the card into her apron pocket. Thank you for the offer. That's all I ask. He pulled out Megan's chair, helping her settle back into her seat with the careful attention of a devoted father. Now, I believe we have a menu to review. And Clara? He looked up at her. Take your time with our order. We're in no hurry. Clara nodded, her professional demeanor sliding back into place like a familiar coat. She retrieved menus from the host stand, her hand steadier now, and returned to table 7. As she described the evening's specials, herb-crusted lamb, seared halibut, handmade pasta with truffle cream sauce, she was hyper-aware of the weight of the business card in her pocket. It felt heavier than it should, as if it carried the weight of a decision that would change everything. Across the restaurant, Robert Garcia sat at table 12, his face thunderous, stabbing at his appetizer with unnecessary force. He kept glancing toward table 7, his expression murderous. Clara had made an enemy tonight, a powerful one. But she'd also made an impression on someone even more powerful. The question was, which would matter more in the end? The rest of Clara's shift passed in a blur of controlled chaos. She served the Mafia boss and Megan with meticulous care, bringing out each course with perfect timing, refilling water glasses before they were half empty, anticipating needs before they were voiced. It was the kind of service she'd perfected over 3 years, but tonight it felt different, weighted with significance she didn't fully understand. Megan ordered the pasta with butter and parmesan, the simplest item on the children's menu, but her father insisted she try a bite of his filet mignon. Clara watched their easy interaction, the way he cut a small piece and held it out on his fork, the way Megan wrinkled her nose before trying it and then nodding approvingly. It was so ordinary, so tender, that it made the earlier confrontation with Robert seem like it had happened in a different universe. "What do you think?" the mafia boss asked his daughter. "It's good, but I like my pasta better," Megan declared, and he laughed. A genuine, warm sound that made several nearby diners glance over in surprise. "Fair enough. You have excellent taste for an 8-year-old." Between courses, Clara attended to her other tables, but she was acutely aware of Robert's presence at table 12. He'd been joined by two other men in expensive suits, and their conversation seemed heated, punctuated by sharp gestures and lowered voices. Every so often, Robert's gaze would snap to her, cold and calculating, and she'd feel a chill run down her spine. "Table 7 wants to see you," whispered Maria, one of the other servers, catching Clara's arm as she passed. "I think they're ready for dessert." Clara nodded, smoothing her apron and heading back. She'd learned to read the restaurant's atmosphere like a language, the subtle shifts in energy, the way power flowed between tables. Tonight, Table 7 was the sun around which everything else orbited, whether the other diners acknowledged it or not. "How was everything?" she asked, approaching with a professional smile. "Excellent," the mafia boss said. He'd barely touched his wine, she noticed, while Megan had enthusiastically worked through a Shirley Temple complete with extra cherries. "My daughter would like to see the dessert menu." Megan's eyes lit up. "Do they have chocolate cake?" "They have the best chocolate cake in Chicago," Clara assured her, pulling out the leather-bound dessert menu. "It's called Devil's Food Cake, and it comes with homemade vanilla ice cream." "Can I have that, Papa, please?" "Of course." He glanced at Clara. "And 2 spoons. I'll help her with it." Clara took the order, noting the casual affection in the gesture. This man, who'd made a millionaire CEO back down with nothing but words and presence, was going to share dessert with his daughter. The contradiction fascinated her. In the kitchen, she placed the dessert order and leaned against the stainless steel counter for a moment, allowing herself a breath. Her feet ached, her lower back was screaming, and the adrenaline crash was making her slightly nauseous. "Girl, what did you do?" Maria appeared beside her, eyes wide. "Vincent is having a panic attack in his office. Robert Garcia looks like he wants to murder someone, and the guy at table 7 keeps asking for you specifically." Clara shook her head. "I just stood up for his daughter. Some rich guy was trying to take their table, and I couldn't just let him bully a little girl." "That rich guy was Robert Garcia. Do you know what he could do to you, to this place?" Maria's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "And the man at table 7? Clara, do you know who that is?" "I have an idea," Clara admitted quietly. "That's Dominic Santoro." Maria said the name like it explained everything. And maybe it did. Clara had heard whispers about the Santoro family. Everyone in Chicago had. They owned legitimate businesses, sure, but everyone knew there was more beneath the surface. Protection, gambling, control over certain unions, and construction contracts. They were the kind of power that didn't advertise itself, but everyone respected. Or feared. "He seems like a good father," Clara said, and Maria stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "A good father? Clara, I know what he is." Clara straightened, checking the ticket for table 7's dessert. "But he was kind to me tonight. He defended me when he didn't have to. And his daughter is sweet." Maria opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, shaking her head. "Just be careful, okay? Men like that don't do things out of pure kindness. Everything comes with a price." The dessert came up, a towering slice of chocolate cake with dark, moist layers and thick frosting, accompanied by a generous scoop of vanilla ice cream, already beginning to melt into a creamy pool. Clara arranged it on a tray with 2 spoons and a fresh napkin, then carried it back to table 7. Megan's face lit up when she saw it. "It's huge." "The portions here are generous," Clara said, setting it down between them. "I brought extra napkins. They can get a little messy." Dominic smiled at that, then looked up at Clara with an expression she couldn't quite read. When does your shift end? She glanced at the antique clock on the far wall. About 45 minutes. Would you be willing to stay a few minutes after? Just to talk. I promise it won't take long, and I'll make it worth your time. Clara hesitated. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a bad idea, that getting involved with someone like Dominic Santoro would only lead to trouble. But she thought about her mother's medical bills, about the collection notices stuffed in their mailbox, about the way her manager had looked at her tonight, like she was both a liability and potentially something more valuable. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll meet you after my shift. Good. He handed her a black American Express card without looking at the bill. Add 25% for yourself. You earned it tonight. 25% of their bill would be over $100. Clara's usual tips ranged from 15 to 20% on a good night, and this would be her largest table. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the card. Thank you, sir. Dominic, he corrected gently. When we talk later, you can call me Dominic. She nodded, then retreated to process the payment, her mind spinning. Maria caught her eye from across the room, her expression worried, but Clara couldn't think about that now. She had 45 minutes to finish her shift, to serve her remaining tables, to pretend everything was normal. But nothing was normal anymore. At table 12, Robert Garcia was watching her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He'd seen the interaction at table 7, seen Dominic hand her his card, seen the easy familiarity between them, and judging by his expression, he was already planning something. Clara forced herself to look away to focus on her work. She brought out entrees for table 9, refreshed drinks at table 4, cleared plates at table 11. The familiar rhythm of service steadied her, gave her something concrete to hold on to while her thoughts raced. What kind of job could Dominic Santoro possibly be offering her? What would working for a man like that entail? And more importantly, could she afford to say no? The clock on the wall ticked forward relentlessly. 30 minutes, 20, 15. Megan and Dominic finished their dessert with Megan getting chocolate frosting on her nose and giggling while her father gently wiped it away with a napkin. They lingered over the last bites, talking quietly. And Clara found herself eavesdropping shamelessly during her passes by their table. Did you have fun tonight, Principessa? Dominic asked. Yes, Papa, especially when Clara helped me. Megan's voice was earnest. She was like a superhero. She was brave, Dominic agreed. Real courage is being afraid but doing the right thing anyway. Remember that. 10 minutes left in her shift. Clara's other tables were settling their bills, gathering coats, heading out into the Chicago night. The restaurant was beginning to empty, the dinner rush winding down into the quieter, late evening atmosphere. Vincent emerged from his office, his face still pale but more composed than earlier. He caught Clara's eye and gestured for her to follow him into the back hallway, away from the dining room. Clara, he began, then paused, seeming unsure how to continue. What you did tonight, standing up to Robert Garcia, that took guts. Probably too much guts for your own good. I'm sorry if I caused problems. No, you don't understand. Vincent ran a hand through his thinning hair. Robert called the owner. He wants you fired. He's threatening to pull his corporate events, his business dinners, everything. That's a 6-figure contract. Clara's stomach dropped. I'm fired? No. Vincent's expression was complicated. Because Dominic Santoro also called the owner, and Augustino told Robert that if he had a problem with how his staff protected children from harassment, he could take his business elsewhere. Clara stared at him, not quite believing what she was hearing. Dominic Santoro carries more weight than Robert Garcia ever will, Vincent continued. But Clara, you need to understand. You're in the middle of something now. Something bigger than a restaurant dispute. Men like that don't forget. I know, Clara whispered. Be careful. Whatever Santoro offers you tonight, think very carefully before you accept. Vincent's eyes were kind but worried. I've worked in this city long enough to know that favors from powerful men always come with strings attached. Her shift ended at exactly 10 o'clock. Clara changed out of her work shoes, counting her tips in the staff bathroom with shaking hands. Including Dominic's generous gratuity, she'd made almost $400 tonight, more than she usually made in a week. She could pay her mother's latest prescription refill, maybe even catch up on the electric bill, but at what cost? Clara tucked the money into her purse, checked her reflection in the mirror, exhausted eyes, hair slightly mussed from the evening's chaos, mascara smudged at the corners, and headed back out to the dining room. Dominic and Megan were still there, waiting at table 7. Megan had her sketch pad out again, working on a new drawing. When she saw Clara, she waved enthusiastically. Ready? Dominic asked, standing. His security detail materialized from their positions near the entrance, flanking him at a discreet distance. Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. My car is outside. We can talk there if that's acceptable. Or we can stay here if you'd prefer somewhere more public. The offer surprised her. He was giving her a choice, acknowledging that she might be uncomfortable with privacy. It was more consideration than she'd expected. The car's fine, she said, then immediately wondered if that was stupid, if she was making a terrible mistake. But it was too late to back out now. They walked through the restaurant together, and Clara was acutely aware of the remaining staff watching them leave. Maria caught her eye one last time, her expression screaming to be careful. Outside, the November air bit through Clara's light jacket. Chicago's streets gleamed with recent rain, reflecting the neon signs and streetlights and shimmering pools. A black Mercedes SUV waited at the curb, idling quietly. One of the security men opened the back door. Dominic helped Megan in first, settling her into a booster seat. Even Mafia bosses followed car seat laws, apparently, then gestured for Clara to enter. She climbed in, the leather seats soft and expensive beneath her. Dominic followed, and the door closed behind them, sealing them into the quiet, climate-controlled interior. This was it. Whatever came next would change everything. Clara took a breath and waited for Dominic Santoro to explain exactly what he wanted from her. The interior of the Mercedes was pristine. Soft leather seats, subtle ambient lighting, and a privacy screen separating them from the driver. Megan sat on the other side of her father, already absorbed in her sketchpad again, humming softly to herself. The contrast between the child's innocent presence and the gravity of the moment struck Clara as surreal. Dominic leaned back against the seat, studying Clara with an intensity that made her want to squirm. But she held his gaze, refusing to show weakness even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. You're probably wondering why I asked you here, he began, his voice low and measured. The thought crossed my mind, Clara said, aiming for calm despite her nerves. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. I like that. No false deference, no pretending to be something you're not. That's rare in my world. He paused, glancing at Megan. What you did tonight, stepping between my daughter and a man who could have made your life very difficult. That showed character, courage, loyalty to someone you didn't even know. She's a child, Clara said simply. And he was being cruel. I couldn't just stand by. Most people would have. Most people do. Dominic's expression hardened slightly. The world is full of people who see injustice and look away because it's safer, easier, more convenient. You didn't. That tells me something about who you are. Clara waited, unsure where this was leading. I have a problem, Dominic continued. Megan's previous nanny left 3 weeks ago. Family emergency, nothing sinister. But I haven't been able to find a suitable replacement. I've interviewed 15 candidates. All of them had impressive credentials, impeccable references, years of experience. He looked at his daughter with undisguised affection. But none of them were right. They saw a job, a paycheck, a line on their resume. They didn't see Megan. Megan glanced up from her drawing, listening now. My daughter needs someone who will protect her. Not just from physical danger, but from people like Robert Garcia. People who think money makes them entitled to anything they want. People who don't see others as fully human. Dominic turned back to Clara. She needs someone with a spine. Someone who won't be intimidated. Someone who will stand up for her even when it's hard. Clara's breath caught as understanding dawned. You're offering me a job as Megan's nanny. More than that, A position in my household. Full time. Live in. You'd have your own suite in my home, access to a car, full health insurance. For you and your mother. He said the last part deliberately, and Clara's eyes widened. How did you know about my mother? I know a lot of things, Clara. I made some calls during dessert. His expression softened slightly. Your mother has advanced diabetes and needs regular dialysis. You're working two jobs, here and weekend shifts at a diner in Bridgeport, trying to keep up with medical bills. You've depleted your savings. You're 3 months behind on rent. Clara felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that made her want to bolt from the car. That's private information. Yes, it is. And I apologize for the intrusion, but I needed to understand who you are, what motivates you. I don't invite people into my home, into my daughter's life, without doing my homework. He leaned forward slightly. The position I'm offering would pay $80,000 a year, plus housing, meals, and comprehensive health coverage. The insurance would cover your mother's treatments fully. No co-pays, no deductibles, no networks to navigate. $80,000. Clara's current jobs combined brought in maybe $35,000 before taxes, and insurance that would actually cover her mother's needs without the constant fights with providers, without the mounting debt. It was too good to be true, which meant there had to be a catch. What exactly would this job entail? Clara asked carefully. Taking care of Megan, getting her to and from school, helping with homework, preparing meals, organizing activities, being present, engaged, protective. Dominic's voice was steady. I travel frequently for business. I need someone I can trust absolutely to keep her safe and happy in my absence. And the less conventional aspects? Clara pressed. You're not offering this salary just for childcare. What aren't you telling me? Dominic's smile returned, genuine this time. See? That intelligence, that refusal to be fooled. That's exactly why I want you for this position. He glanced at Megan, who was watching them both with bright, curious eyes. Principessa, why don't you put on your headphones for a few minutes? The adults need to have a boring conversation. Megan nodded, pulling out a pair of pink headphones from her backpack and settling them over her ears. She returned to her drawing, effectively tuned out. Dominic's expression grew serious. You know what I am, what my family does. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. My business involves gray areas. Nothing that would ever directly touch Megan, but there are dangers that come with being my daughter. People who might try to use her as leverage. Enemies who might see her as a target. Clara's throat went dry. You're saying she could be in danger. I'm saying she's always protected. I have the best security money can buy. But security can't replace genuine care, genuine connection. Those men outside, he gestured toward the front of the vehicle. They'd take a bullet for her without hesitation. But they can't help her with her math homework. They can't comfort her when she has nightmares about her mother. The grief Clara had glimpsed earlier flickered across his face again, raw and real. Megan's mother died 2 years ago, Dominic said quietly. Cancer. She was everything. The only person who ever saw me as more than what I do, who I come from. Megan looks like her, has her talent for art, her gentle spirit, and she misses her every single day. Clara felt something crack in her chest. I'm sorry. So am I. Dominic took a breath, composing himself. I'm not asking you to replace her mother. No one could. But I am asking you to be someone Megan can trust, can rely on, can feel safe with. Someone who will put her first always, the way you did tonight without even knowing her. The offer was tempting in a way that terrified Clara. The money would solve every immediate problem she and her mother faced. But working for Dominic Santoro, living in his world, would come with complications she couldn't fully anticipate. You said enemies might target her, Clara said slowly. What would that mean for me? If I take this job, am I in danger too? Potentially. Though anyone who wanted to harm my household would have to get through multiple layers of security first. The risk is real, but minimized. Dominic's eyes held hers. I won't lie to you, Clara. This job comes with complexities that a normal nanny position wouldn't have, but it also comes with resources and protection that most people never access. You and your mother would be safe, taken care of. That's my guarantee. And if I say no, then I thank you for your time, compensate you for the inconvenience, and you go back to your life. No pressure, no consequences. What happened tonight at the restaurant? You earned my gratitude regardless of your answer now. I don't make enemies of people who've helped my daughter. Clara believed him. There was something about his directness, his refusal to dress things up in false promises, that rang true. She thought about her mother, about the latest call from the hospital billing department, about the way her mother had tried to hide how much pain she was in during their last phone conversation. She thought about the cramped apartment they shared, the water stains on the ceiling, the neighbors who fought at 3 in the morning. She thought about her own exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness of working herself to the breaking point and still falling behind. And she thought about Megan, sweet, talented Megan, who'd lost her mother and needed someone to care about her, not just watch her. Can I ask you something? Clara said. Of course. Why me, really? You could hire someone with experience, credentials, someone from a professional agency. Why a waitress you just met? Dominic considered the question carefully. Because credentials don't mean anything when it matters. I've learned that the hard way. Some of the most educated, well-connected people I've known have been completely without integrity. And some of the most honest, courageous people have been those the world overlooks. He gestured toward the restaurant they'd left behind. You had everything to lose tonight and nothing to gain. You could have been fired, blacklisted, ruined, but you stood up for my daughter anyway because it was right. That's not something you can teach or fake. That's who you are. Clara felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. She didn't cry. She'd learned early that crying didn't solve problems. I need to think about it, she said, and I need to talk to my mother. Of course. Take 24 hours. Here. Dominic pulled out another card, this one with an address printed below the phone number. This is my home. If you decide to accept, come by tomorrow at noon. I'll have the paperwork ready, and we can discuss details. If you decide not to accept, call the number and let me know. No judgment either way. Clara took the card, her fingers brushing against his briefly. His hands were warm, calloused in a way that reminded her he wasn't just a man who signed papers and gave orders from behind a desk. One more thing, Dominic added. Robert Garcia is going to be a problem. He's not the type to forget or forgive perceived slights. If you take this job, you'll have my protection. If you don't, he hesitated. Be careful, watch your back. Men like him have long memories and resources to match. A chill ran through Clara. She'd known making an enemy of Robert was dangerous, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I understand, she said quietly. Dominic nodded to his driver, and the SUV pulled smoothly away from the curb. Where can I take you? Clara gave him her address in Bridgeport, then settled back into the leather seat, her mind racing. The drive took 20 minutes through Chicago's late-night streets, past brownstones and corner stores, through neighborhoods that shifted from affluent to working class with startling speed. When they pulled up outside her building, a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a broken security door, the contrast between her world and Dominic's couldn't have been more stark. Clara saw him take it in without comment, his expression neutral. Thank you for the ride, Clara said, reaching for the door handle. Clara. Dominic's voice stopped her. Whatever you decide, know that what you did tonight mattered. To my daughter. To me. Some people go their whole lives without doing one truly brave thing. You did it without hesitation. Don't forget that about yourself. Megan pulled off her headphones. Will you come tomorrow, please? I want to show you my room and my art supplies and my treehouse. Clara's heart squeezed. I'll let you know tomorrow, okay? Okay. Megan smiled, then did something unexpected. She leaned over and hugged Clara quickly. Thank you for being nice to me. Then the security guard was opening Clara's door and she was stepping out into the cold Chicago night. and the Mercedes was pulling away, leaving her standing on the cracked sidewalk with two business cards in her pocket and a decision that would change everything. Clara climbed the 3 flights to her apartment, her legs heavy with exhaustion. She unlocked the door quietly, not wanting to wake her mother if she was sleeping. But the lights were on, and her mother was sitting in their worn armchair, an oxygen tube in her nose, watching the door as if she'd been waiting up. Mama, you should be in bed, Clara said, dropping her purse and jacket. I wanted to wait for you. You're later than usual. Her mother's voice was thin but warm. Good tips tonight? Clara sank onto the couch across from her, suddenly unable to hold it all in. Mama, something happened. Something big. And then, like a dam breaking, she told her mother everything. About Megan and Robert Garcia, about Dominic Santoro, about the job offer that seemed too good to be true, but might be the answer to every prayer she'd been too tired to voice. Her mother listened in silence, her dark eyes, so like Clara's own, taking it all in. When Clara finished, exhausted from the telling, her mother was quiet for a long moment. This man, she finally said, you trust him? I don't know, Clara admitted, but I trust what I saw tonight. The way he is with his daughter, the way he stood up for me when he didn't have to. And you want to take the job? It wasn't a question. Her mother had always been able to read her. I think I do, Clara whispered. But I'm scared, Mama. What if I'm making a mistake? What if this is dangerous? What if... Clara. Her mother reached out, taking her daughter's hand. Her fingers were thin, the skin papery, but her grip was firm. You have been taking care of me for so long, working yourself to exhaustion, sacrificing everything for someone else, just like you did for that little girl tonight. That's who you are, my brave, beautiful girl who can't walk away from someone who needs help. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks now, unchecked. But maybe, her mother continued softly, it's time to let someone take care of you too. To accept help when it's offered. This man, he sees what you did tonight. He values it. That means something. What if it's too dangerous? Life is dangerous, Mika. Walking out our door every morning is dangerous in this neighborhood. Working until you collapse is dangerous. Slowly drowning in debt while I get sicker is dangerous. Her mother squeezed her hand. At least this danger comes with hope, with possibilities, with a little girl who needs you. Clara sobbed then, all the fear and stress and exhaustion of the night pouring out. Her mother held her, stroking her hair the way she had when Clara was small, before the world had gotten so complicated and heavy. Sleep on it, her mother finally said. See how you feel in the morning. But Clara, I think you already know what you're going to do. Clara did know. She'd known since Megan had hugged her in the car, since Dominic had spoken about his daughter with such obvious love, since she'd felt what it was like to stand up for something and have someone powerful stand with her instead of against her. She was going to say yes. And tomorrow, her life would begin again. Clara barely slept that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of her neighborhood. Sirens in the distance, someone's car alarm going off, the couple upstairs arguing in muffled Spanish. The business card sat on her nightstand, visible in the amber glow of the streetlight filtering through her thin curtains. By 5 in the morning, she gave up on sleep. She made coffee in their ancient percolator, the smell filling their small kitchen, and sat at the worn Formica table where she'd done her homework as a child. Her mother's pill organizer sat nearby, a stark reminder of why this decision mattered so much. At 7, her mother shuffled out of her bedroom, moving slowly, one hand braced against the wall for support. You didn't sleep, her mother observed, settling into her chair with a soft grunt of effort. Couldn't. Clara poured her mother coffee, adding the exact amount of cream and sugar she preferred. I kept thinking about everything that could go wrong. And everything that could go right? Clara smiled despite her anxiety. That too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping coffee as morning light gradually filled the apartment. Clara had called in sick to her diner shift, something she never did, because she needed this time to think, to prepare. When do you need to give him an answer? Her mother asked. Noon. He wants me to come to his house if I'm saying yes. Clara traced the rim of her mug with one finger. Mama, what if I can't do this? What if I'm not good enough? I've never been a nanny. I don't know anything about raising children. You raised yourself, Mia, when I was too sick to do it properly. You were making dinner and doing laundry by the time you were 10. You kept us together when your father left. Her mother's voice was firm. You know more about taking care of people than most. And more importantly, you care. That little girl saw it. Her father saw it. That's what matters. Clara nodded, feeling some of her anxiety ease. Her mother had always had a way of cutting through her doubts to the truth beneath. At 10 o'clock, Clara stood in front of her closet, trying to decide what to wear to meet a mafia boss at his home. Everything she owned felt wrong. Too casual, too worn, too obviously cheap. Finally, she settled on her best jeans, a simple black sweater, and the leather jacket she'd saved for months to buy. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. She wasn't going to pretend to be something she wasn't. She helped her mother with her morning medications, made sure she had lunch prepared and her phone nearby, then called for an Uber. The ride to Dominic's address took 40 minutes, carrying her from Bridgeport through downtown and out to the North Shore, where the houses grew larger and more imposing with each passing mile. The driver pulled up to a set of wrought iron gates set into a stone wall. A call box stood beside them, and Clara leaned out the window to press the button, her heart hammering. Clara Rios for Mr. Santoro, she said when a voice answered. The gates swung open silently, and they drove up a curved driveway lined with mature trees just beginning to show their autumn colors. The house at the end took Clara's breath away, a sprawling stone mansion that managed to look elegant rather than ostentatious, with tall windows and ivy climbing one wall. This was going to be her home. Maybe, if she went through with this. Clara paid the driver and stood for a moment on the circular drive, gathering her courage. Before she could second guess herself, the massive front door opened, and Dominic appeared, dressed more casually than last night in dark jeans and a gray sweater. He looked younger this way, more approachable. You came, he said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. I'm here to say yes, Clara said before she could lose her nerve, if the offer still stands. Dominic's smile was genuine and warm. It absolutely does. Come in, let me show you around. The interior of the house was stunning, but surprisingly warm. Clara had expected cold marble and intimidating art, but instead found hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, and photographs on the walls. Megan at various ages, a beautiful dark-haired woman who must have been her mother, candid shots of family gatherings and holidays. Megan's at school, Dominic explained as he led Clara through the first floor, but she made me promise to text her the moment you arrived. She's been asking about you all morning. They passed through a state-of-the-art kitchen with professional appliances, a formal dining room that could seat 20, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a comfortable den with a massive fireplace. Everything was impeccably maintained, but lived in, loved. Your suite is on the second floor near Megan's room, Dominic said, leading her up a curved staircase. I'm on the third floor, so you'll have privacy, but still be close enough to hear if she needs anything at night. He opened a door to reveal a space that was larger than Clara's entire current apartment. There was a bedroom with a king-sized bed, a sitting area with a couch and television, a walk-in closet, and a bathroom with both a soaking tub and a separate shower. Windows overlooked the back garden, where Clara could see what looked like a treehouse nestled in an old oak. This is too much, Clara breathed. This is what you deserve, Dominic corrected. Someone who works for me, who takes care of what matters most to me, gets treated well. That's non-negotiable. He showed her Megan's room next, a bright space filled with art supplies, books, and stuffed animals. One wall was covered in her drawings, a gallery of her young imagination. Clara studied them, impressed by the girl's talent. She draws every day, Dominic said softly. It's how she processes things. After her mother died, she barely spoke for 3 months. But she drew, page after page after page. Her therapist said it was healthy, that she was working through her grief the only way she could. Clara turned to look at him. She still sees a therapist? Once a week. Dr. Chen, she's excellent. He met Clara's eyes. I'll never hide Megan's needs from you. She's a happy child most of the time, but she carries pain. Sometimes she has nightmares. Sometimes she gets quiet and withdrawn. Sometimes she asks questions about her mother that I don't know how to answer. Part of your job will be supporting her through those moments. I can do that, Clara said with more confidence than she felt. They returned downstairs to Dominic's office, a masculine space with dark wood furniture and a wall of windows overlooking the grounds. He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. The contract, he said, sliding it across to her. Everything we discussed: salary, benefits, housing. I've also included a clothing allowance because you'll be accompanying Megan to various activities and events. You'll need appropriate attire. Clara scanned the document, her eyes widening at the numbers. It wasn't just the $80,000 salary. There were quarterly bonuses, paid vacation, a stipend for continuing education if she wanted to take classes. And the health insurance section confirmed what he'd promised: full coverage for both her and her mother, with a list of benefits that made her current bare bones policy look like a joke. There's a section about confidentiality, Dominic said, pointing to a paragraph. What you see and hear in this house stays private. Always. That's for your protection as much as mine. Clara understood. She would be living in the home of a man whose business dealings weren't entirely legal. She would inevitably see and hear things that could be dangerous to know. I can agree to that, she said quietly. And this section, he flipped to another page, covers emergency protocols. God forbid anything should happen, but if there's ever a threat to the household, you follow the security team's instructions without question. They're trained to keep you and Megan safe. The reality of what she was stepping into hit Clara again. This wasn't just a nanny job. This was entering a world where emergency protocols were necessary, where security teams were essential. But she'd made her decision, for her mother, for herself, and yes, for Megan, who'd lost her mother and needed someone who genuinely cared. Where do I sign? Clara asked. Dominic handed her a pen, heavy, expensive, probably worth more than her entire wardrobe. Clara signed her name on the designated lines, her handwriting looking small and uncertain next to the typed text. Welcome to the family, Dominic said when she finished. He extended his hand and Clara shook it, feeling the strength in his grip. You can move in as soon as you're ready. Today, if you want. I'll have my people help you pack and transport your things. I need to talk to my mother first, help her transition. Your mother will be taken care of, Dominic interrupted gently. I've already arranged for a home health aide to stay with her during the day while you're here. And I'm having her apartment renovated. New fixtures, fresh paint, repairs to anything that needs it. She'll be comfortable and safe. Clara felt tears threatening again. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. You're taking care of what matters most to me. I take care of what matters most to you. That's how this works. A phone buzzed and Dominic pulled it from his pocket, smiling at whatever message he'd received. Megan wants to know if you're staying. She says, and I quote, "Please, please, please say yes, Papa." Clara laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Tell her yes, and that I can't wait to see her treehouse. Dominic typed rapidly, then showed Clara the response. 3 heart emojis and a drawing of a stick figure with curly hair that was presumably meant to be Clara. She likes you, Dominic said unnecessarily. That's rare. She's usually reserved with new people. But she said this morning that you have the kind eyes. He pocketed his phone. Children are excellent judges of character, better than adults usually. They haven't learned to ignore their instincts yet. I hope I can live up to her faith in me, Clara said softly. You already have. Dominic gestured for her to follow him back toward the entrance. I need to handle some business this afternoon, but my driver will take you home, help you pack, and bring you back. Take whatever you need. If you want to bring furniture or personal items, we have plenty of storage. They walked back through the beautiful house that was now impossibly going to be Clara's home. At the door, Dominic paused. One more thing, he said, about Robert Garcia. I've had some of my people keep an eye on him. He's angry about what happened last night. He's been making calls, trying to find leverage against you or me. So far, he's come up empty, but men like him don't give up easily. Clara's stomach tightened with anxiety. What should I do? Nothing. You're under my protection now. If he approaches you, contacts you, or threatens you in any way, you tell me immediately. Understand? Clara nodded, both reassured and unnerved by the casual way Dominic discussed protection and threats. I won't let anyone hurt you, Dominic said, his voice taking on an edge she hadn't heard before. You're part of this family now, and I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, Clara felt something else, a sense of safety she hadn't experienced in years. Someone powerful was on her side for once, watching her back, making sure she wasn't alone against the world. The driver, a quiet man introduced as James, drove Clara back to Bridgeport in a different vehicle than last night. This one a more understated sedan. But even understated, it was nicer than anything Clara had ever ridden in regularly. Her mother was waiting when she arrived, sitting in her chair by the window, and one look at Clara's face told her everything. You said yes, her mother said. I said yes. Clara knelt beside her mother's chair, taking her weathered hands. Mama, he's going to take care of you too. He's sending someone to help you during the day, and he's having the apartment fixed up. Everything that's been broken, everything we couldn't afford to repair. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Mia, you don't have to. I want to, and he wants to. He understands family, Mama. He understands what it means to take care of the people you love. They held each other for a long moment, and Clara felt the weight of years of struggle lifting slightly. Not gone, never completely gone, but lighter, manageable. Over the next 3 hours, with James's patient help, Clara packed her life into boxes and suitcases. She didn't have much: clothes, books, a few photographs, and mementos from happier times. It was humbling to see how little she'd accumulated, how sparse her existence had become. But that was ending now. She was starting over. As they loaded the last box into the car, her mother pulled her aside one final time. Be careful, Clara. This man, he's been kind to you, generous. But don't forget what he is. Don't let yourself get so comfortable that you forget the danger. I won't, Clara promised. And call me. Every day. I need to know you're safe. Every day, Clara agreed, hugging her mother tightly. I love you, Mama. I love you too, my brave girl. The drive back to Dominic's estate, her new home, felt surreal. Clara watched Chicago pass by the windows, leaving behind the only neighborhood she'd ever known. Fear and excitement warred in her chest. When they arrived, Megan was waiting on the front steps, bouncing with barely contained enthusiasm. The moment the car stopped, she came running over. You're here! You're really here! Papa said you were coming, but I wanted to see for myself. The words tumbled out in a rush. Clara climbed out of the car and Megan immediately grabbed her hand. Come on, I have to show you everything. Your room is right next to mine and there's a connecting door, so if you need anything, you can just knock and Papa says we can paint your room any color you want. And I think you should choose blue because blue is calming, but also happy and... Breathe, Principessa, Dominic said, appearing behind his daughter with an amused expression. Let Clara actually get inside before you talk her ear off. But Clara was smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Megan's enthusiasm was infectious, her joy uncomplicated and real. Show me everything, Clara said, squeezing Megan's hand. I want to see it all. And as Megan dragged her into the house, chattering excitedly about school and art class and the new colored pencils her father had bought her, Clara felt something unexpected bloom in her chest. Hope. Maybe this would work. Maybe she could do this. Maybe, just maybe, defending one little girl in a restaurant had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Clara's first week in the Santoro household passed in a whirlwind of adjustment and discovery. She woke each morning in her luxurious suite, still half expecting to find herself back in her cramped Bridgeport apartment, only to be reminded by the soft sheets and the view of the manicured gardens that this was real. Megan proved to be an easy child to care for, bright, curious, and remarkably well-behaved for an 8-year-old. Their routine quickly established itself. Clara would wake Megan at 7, help her choose an outfit for school, and make breakfast while the girl got ready. Dominic usually joined them, taking those morning moments to connect with his daughter before his day pulled him in a dozen different directions. What are you learning about today? Dominic asked on Thursday morning, cutting Megan's pancakes into precise squares the way she preferred. Ancient Egypt, Megan said, around a mouthful of syrup soaked pancake. We're learning about pyramids and mummies and pharaohs. Miss Rodriguez says we might get to make our own sarcophagus next week. That sounds fascinating. Dominic glanced at Clara, who was refilling coffee mugs. Did you study ancient civilizations in school, Clara? Some, Clara said, settling into what had become her usual seat at the breakfast table. The first morning, she'd tried to eat separately, thinking it more appropriate, but Dominic had insisted she join them. I always thought the Egyptian view of the afterlife was interesting. All that preparation for death, building monuments to last forever. They understood something important, Dominic said quietly. Legacy. What you leave behind matters more than what you accumulate during life. There was weight to his words, and Clara wondered what kind of legacy a man like Dominic Santoro hoped to leave. Power? Fear? Or perhaps just a daughter who remembered being loved. After breakfast, Clara drove Megan to school in one of the estate's vehicles, a Mercedes SUV that handled like a dream compared to anything Clara had driven before. The private school was in an affluent suburb, all brick buildings and manicured lawns, where children arrived in luxury cars and wore uniforms that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe used to. Will you pick me up today? Megan asked as Clara walked her to the entrance. Every day, Clara promised, unless your father tells me otherwise. Good. Megan hugged her quickly, unself-consciously, then bounded off to join her classmates. Clara watched her go, feeling that now familiar tug of protective affection. In just a week, Megan had worked her way into Clara's heart with her genuine sweetness and creative spirit. The mornings while Megan was at school became Clara's time to manage the household, coordinating with the housekeeping staff, planning meals with the cook, organizing Megan's schedule of activities and appointments. It was more complex than she'd anticipated, a careful orchestration that kept everything running smoothly. She also used those hours to call her mother, checking on her health and spirits. The nurse they sent is wonderful, her mother reported that Thursday. Maria, she's from Ecuador, and we talk about everything. And Mija, you should see the apartment. They repainted the whole thing, fixed the leak in the bathroom, replaced the old stove. It's like living somewhere new. I'm glad, Mama, Clara said, relief washing through her. She'd worried constantly about leaving her mother, but Dominic had kept his word. Her mother was being cared for properly. How is the little girl? Her mother asked. She's amazing. Smart and funny and so talented. You should see her drawings, Mama. She's better at 8 than I ever was. And the father? Clara hesitated. He's complicated, but good to his daughter. Good to me. Fair. But, her mother pressed, knowing her too well. But I'm learning things about his world, Clara admitted quietly. I see meetings that happen late at night. Men who come to the house with problems. Phone calls he takes in Italian, his voice hard and cold. It reminds me that this isn't a normal household, that there are things happening beneath the surface. Are you safe? Yes, absolutely. He's very protective of both of us. Clara thought about the security team that was always present but unobtrusive. About the way Dominic always knew where Megan was, who Clara had interacted with. Sometimes I think maybe too protective, but then I remember why it's necessary. They talked for a few more minutes before Clara had to leave to pick up Megan from school. The afternoon routine was different each day. Mondays were art class, Wednesdays were piano lessons, Fridays were therapy with Dr. Chen. The other days, Clara and Megan would return to the estate, where Megan would do homework while Clara prepared snacks and supervised. Thursday afternoon, they were in the kitchen making cookies when Dominic arrived home earlier than usual. He looked tired, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, his tie loosened. Papa! Megan abandoned the cookie dough to hug him. We're making chocolate chip cookies. Clara says I can have 3 if I eat all my dinner. That seems fair. Dominic met Clara's eyes over his daughter's head, and something in his expression made her pause. He looked stressed, worried in a way she hadn't seen before. Principessa, why don't you go wash up? Clara and I need to talk for a moment. Megan scampered off, and Clara wiped her flour covered hands on a towel, her stomach tightening with apprehension. Is something wrong? She asked. Dominic set his jacket on a chair and leaned against the counter, suddenly looking every one of his years. Robert Garcia is making moves. Nothing direct yet, but he's been asking questions about you, about your family. He's trying to find something he can use as leverage. Clara's mouth went dry. What kind of questions? Where you live or lived, where your mother is. Your employment history. He's also been spreading rumors among his business associates about me, trying to undermine some deals I have in progress. Dominic's jaw tightened. The man is petty and vindictive, which makes him predictable, but also dangerous. He'll keep pushing until he feels he's evened the score. What do I do? You stay here, stay close. Don't go anywhere alone. If you need to visit your mother, James drives you and waits. No exceptions. Dominic's voice was firm. I'm also increasing security around the estate. You might notice additional personnel. Don't be alarmed, it's precautionary. Clara nodded, fear creeping up her spine. She'd known there would be risks, but having them spelled out so directly made them real, in a way they hadn't been before. I'm sorry, Dominic said quietly. This is my fault. I humiliated him publicly, and now you're caught in the crossfire. I humiliated him first, Clara corrected. I'm the one who stood up to him. You just reinforced it. A ghost of a smile crossed Dominic's face. Still, you're under my protection now, and I take that seriously. Nothing will happen to you or your mother. That's a promise. The intensity in his eyes made Clara believe him absolutely. Over the next few days, Clara noticed the changes Dominic had mentioned. There were more security personnel, their presence less subtle than before. Cameras covered every angle of the property. When Clara drove Megan to school, a second vehicle followed at a discreet distance. Why are there more guards? Megan asked on Friday morning as they pulled out of the estate. Clara glanced at her in the rearview mirror, considering how much to say. Your father is being extra careful right now, making sure everyone is safe. Is it because of that mean man from the restaurant? Megan's voice was small. Is he trying to hurt us? Clara's heart clenched. She pulled into a parking lot and turned to face Megan directly. Your father won't let anyone hurt you. Neither will I. The guards are just being careful, but you're safe. Do you understand? Megan nodded, but her eyes were worried. I heard Papa on the phone last night. He sounded angry. He was talking about protection and consequences. Clara made a mental note to mention this to Dominic. Megan was perceptive, picking up on tensions even when the adults tried to shield her. Your father has a complicated job, Clara said carefully. Sometimes he has to have difficult conversations, but that doesn't mean you're in danger. He's just handling grown-up problems. Like when Mama was sick, Megan said softly. He would have hard conversations with the doctors, but he always told me everything would be okay, even when it wasn't. The raw honesty in those words struck Clara. This child had already lost so much, had already learned that the world wasn't always safe, that promises couldn't always be kept. I won't lie to you, Megan, Clara said. If something is wrong, if you're in danger, I'll tell you. But right now, we're just being cautious. There's a difference. Megan considered this, then nodded. Okay, I trust you. Those 3 words, I trust you, carried more weight than Clara had expected. She'd earned this child's trust in just a week, and she felt the responsibility of it settle over her like a mantle. They arrived at school, and Clara watched Megan disappear into the building before pulling out her phone. She texted Dominic. Megan overheard your call last night. She's worried but handling it well. Thought you should know. His response came within seconds. Thank you for telling me. I'll talk to her tonight. And Clara, thank you for being honest with her. She needs that. The afternoon brought Megan's weekly therapy session with Dr. Chen. Clara usually waited in the reception area, but today Dr. Chen asked to speak with her after Megan's session ended. Come in, Dr. Chen said, gesturing to a comfortable chair in her office. She was a petite woman in her 40s. with kind eyes and an air of unflappable competence. I wanted to touch base with you about Megan's progress. Clara sat, nervous about what the therapist might say. Megan has been talking about you, Dr. Chen continued. A lot, actually. About how you stood up for her, how you make her feel safe, how you answer her questions honestly. Is that good? It's excellent. Dr. Chen smiled. Megan has had a difficult 2 years since her mother's death. She's made progress, but she's been resistant to letting new people into her life. The nannies her father hired before you, she tolerated them, but never connected with them. With you, it's different. She's bonding, trusting, allowing herself to be vulnerable. Relief flooded through Clara. I was worried I might be doing something wrong. I don't have formal training in childcare or dealing with grief. The best thing you can do for Megan is exactly what you're doing, being present, being honest, being consistent. She needs stability and genuine care, not techniques from a textbook. Dr. Chen paused. Her father mentioned there's been some increased security at the house. Is Megan aware of why? Clara explained the situation with Robert Garcia, watching Dr. Chen's expression carefully. It's good that you're being honest with her about there being extra precautions without frightening her, Dr. Chen said. Megan's baseline anxiety has been elevated since her mother's death. She worries about losing the people she loves. Sudden changes without explanation can trigger that anxiety. But if you frame it as adults being responsibly cautious rather than responding to immediate danger, she can process it better. They talked for a few more minutes about Megan's emotional needs, about warning signs to watch for, about ways Clara could support her. When Clara finally left with Megan, she felt more confident in her role, more certain that she was doing right by this child. That evening, Dominic asked Clara to join him in his office after Megan went to bed. She found him standing by the window, looking out at the darkened grounds, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Thank you for what you said to Megan this morning, he said without turning. And for telling Dr. Chen about the security situation. You're handling this better than I expected. I care about her, Clara said simply. I want to do right by her. Dominic turned to face her, and in the lamplight, he looked older, wearier. I had a meeting today with some of my associates. There's a word that Robert is planning something. We don't know what yet, but he's been making inquiries, reaching out to people who might have leverage against me. Clara's heart sank. What kind of leverage? That's what concerns me. I'm careful about my business dealings. I have protocols in place. But every man has vulnerabilities. His eyes locked on hers. And mine is Megan. Everyone knows that. If Robert wanted to hurt me, the most effective way would be to threaten her. The blunt honesty chilled Clara. You think he'd go after an 8-year-old child? I think he's arrogant enough to believe he could get away with it, or angry enough not to care about the consequences. Dominic took a drink, his expression grim. I've dealt with worse men than Robert Garcia, but those men understood the rules of my world. Robert operates by different rules: corporate warfare, legal maneuvering, public relations battles. He'll try to hurt me in ways I might not anticipate. What can I do? Be vigilant. Trust your instincts. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you tell me immediately. Don't worry about overreacting or bothering me. When it comes to Megan's safety, there's no such thing as too careful. Clara nodded, understanding the weight of what he was asking. She wasn't just a nanny anymore. She was part of Megan's security team, the first line of defense against threats that might come from unexpected directions. There's something else, Dominic said, setting down his glass. I need to go to New York next week for business. I'll be gone for 3 days. Normally, I'd take Megan with me, but given the current situation, I think she's safer here, which means you'll be her primary caretaker while I'm away. The thought of Dominic being gone, of being responsible for Megan without his presence as backup, made Clara nervous, but she nodded. I can handle it. I know you can. That's why I'm trusting you. He moved closer, and Clara caught the scent of his cologne, something woody and expensive. You've proven yourself this week, Clara. More than I could have hoped. Megan is happier, more settled. And I'm grateful. Truly. There was something in his voice, something beyond gratitude that made Clara's pulse quicken. She suddenly became aware of how close they were standing, of the intimacy of this late night conversation in his private office. I should go, she said, taking a step back. Let you get back to work. Dominic nodded, but his eyes held hers for a moment longer. Good night, Clara. Sleep well. Good night. Clara retreated to her suite, her mind racing. She'd felt something just then, some spark of awareness that went beyond employer and employee. It was dangerous, foolish even. Dominic Santoro was her boss, a man from a different world, someone whose life was complicated by violence and power struggles she barely understood. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest when she remembered the way he'd looked at her, the genuine gratitude, and something more in his dark eyes. She was falling into something complicated. She just didn't know yet if it would catch her or break her. Outside her window, security lights illuminated the grounds, a reminder that beauty and danger could coexist in the same space, just like everything else in her new life. The weekend arrived with unseasonable warmth, and Megan begged to spend Saturday afternoon in her treehouse. Clara agreed, secretly eager to see this space that Megan talked about constantly. They packed a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and juice boxes, then headed out to the massive oak tree that dominated one corner of the estate's back garden. The treehouse was more elaborate than Clara had imagined. A two-story structure with real windows, a rope ladder, and what looked like electricity running to it. It was the kind of childhood fantasy made real that only wealth could provide. Mama designed it, Megan said as they climbed up. Before she got really sick, she wanted me to have a special place that was just mine. Papa had it built exactly how she drew it. Inside, the treehouse was cozy and personal. Drawings covered the walls, some clearly Megan's work, others more sophisticated, probably her mother's. There were cushions, a small bookshelf, and art supplies organized in clear containers. Through the windows, Clara could see the estate grounds stretching out below, the house in the distance looking like something from a storybook. This is amazing, Clara said honestly. Your mama had great taste. She was an artist too, a real one. She had a gallery show and everything. Megan pulled out a sketchbook from a drawer, handling it carefully. These are hers. Papa keeps most of her art in his office, but he let me keep this one. Clara looked through the pages, moved by what she saw. The drawings were beautiful, landscapes, portraits, scenes of everyday life rendered with skill and emotion. Many were of a young Megan, captured at various ages, the love in every line evident. She was very talented, Clara said softly. And she clearly loved you very much. I miss her. Megan's voice was small. Every day. But sometimes I'm scared I'm forgetting her. Like, I can't remember what her laugh sounded like anymore, or how she smelled. Papa says that's normal, that memories fade, but it feels wrong. Like I'm losing her all over again. Clara's heart ached. She pulled Megan close, and the girl leaned into her, accepting the comfort. My father left when I was young, Clara said quietly. I used to worry about forgetting him too, even though he chose to leave. But you know what? The important stuff doesn't fade. The feeling of being loved, the lessons they taught you, the way they shaped who you are, that stays. Your mother is still part of you, Megan. In your art, in your kindness, in the way you see beauty everywhere. Those things don't disappear. Megan sniffled, wiping her eyes. Do you think she'd like you? The question caught Clara off guard. I don't know. I hope so. I think she would. Papa does. Like you, I mean. I can tell. He smiles more when you're around. Real smiles, not the fake ones he uses with other people. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. Your father is just happy. You're happy. Maybe, but he looks at you different. Like, like he used to look at Mama when he thought she wasn't watching. Megan's perceptiveness was startling. It's okay if you like him too. I wouldn't mind. Megan, Clara began, but the girl was already moving on, pulling out her art supplies. Can you help me draw the house? I want to make a picture for Papa. He's stressed about work, and art always makes me feel better. So maybe it'll help him too. They spent the afternoon drawing, talking, and eating their picnic lunch 30 feet off the ground. Clara found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, simply enjoying the moment without worrying about bills or responsibilities or the next crisis. It was peaceful, perfect even, until her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made Clara answer. Hello, Ms. Rios? The voice was smooth, professional. This is Richard Chen, calling on behalf of Robert Garcia. Mr. Garcia would like to meet with you to discuss a business opportunity. Clara's blood went cold. I'm not interested. I think you should reconsider. Mr. Garcia is prepared to be very generous. He's willing to compensate you significantly for information about your current employer's household and business practices. So that was it. Robert wanted her to spy on Dominic, to betray the man who'd given her everything. Tell Mr. Garcia, Clara said, her voice hard, that he can go to hell. I'm not interested in his money or anything else he has to offer. Ms. Rios, I don't think you understand the opportunity. I understand perfectly, and my answer is no, don't call this number again. She hung up, her hand shaking. Megan was watching her with wide eyes. Who was that? The girl asked. No one important, Clara said, forcing a smile. Just a wrong number. But it wasn't nothing, and they both knew it. Clara immediately texted Dominic. Robert's people just called me. They want me to spy for him. I refused. Thought you should know. His response came immediately. Coming home. Stay in the treehouse until I get there. Security is on alert. 20 minutes later, Clara spotted Dominic striding across the lawn, his expression thunderous. 2 security men flanked him, alert and tense. He climbed up to the treehouse with surprising agility for a man in dress pants and an expensive shirt. Tell me everything, he said without preamble. Clara recounted the phone call, including every detail she could remember. Dominic's jaw clenched tighter with each word. He's escalating, Dominic said when she finished, trying to turn someone inside my household against me. When that didn't work, he'll try something else. Papa, what's happening? Megan's voice wavered with fear. Dominic immediately shifted, his expression softening as he focused on his daughter. Nothing for you to worry about, Principessa. Just some business complications. Clara did exactly the right thing by refusing and telling me immediately. Is the mean man from the restaurant trying to hurt us? Dominic exchanged a glance with Clara, then nodded slowly. He's angry and acting foolishly. But he won't succeed. We're too smart for him, and we're protected, right? Megan nodded, but she looked scared. Dominic pulled her into his lap, and Clara watched as he comforted his daughter, murmuring reassurances in Italian. The tenderness of it struck her again. How this man could be so gentle with Megan while simultaneously being dangerous enough to make powerful men fear him. When Megan had calmed, Dominic carried her down from the treehouse. Why don't you go inside and watch a movie? Clara will make you hot chocolate. I need to make some phone calls. Once Megan was settled in the den with her movie and hot chocolate, Dominic pulled Clara into his office and closed the door. This changes things, he said. Robert is desperate enough to try recruitment. That means he's planning something bigger. What do we do? I need to handle this directly, which means my New York trip is canceled. I'm not leaving you and Megan while Robert is making moves. Dominic paced, his mind clearly working through scenarios. I'm also going to have a conversation with some mutual acquaintances who can make it clear to Robert that he's crossed a line. What kind of conversation? Clara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. The kind that makes consequences very clear. Dominic's voice was cold. In my world, there are rules. You don't target children. You don't try to turn someone's household against them. Robert doesn't understand those rules because he's lived his whole life in boardrooms and country clubs where the worst that happens is a bad quarterly report. He needs to be educated. Clara shivered at the steel in his tone. This was the other side of Dominic Santoro. Not the devoted father or generous employer, but the man who commanded respect through power and fear. I don't want you to do anything that, she began, but he cut her off. Clara, I appreciate your concern, but this is necessary. Robert won't stop until he feels consequences. Right now, he thinks he's untouchable because he has money and lawyers and political connections. He needs to understand that those things don't protect him from me. Before Clara could respond, Dominic's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened further. It's my contact at the police department. Excuse me. He answered in Italian, his voice clipped and tense. Clara couldn't follow most of the conversation, but she caught enough to understand something serious had happened. When Dominic hung up, he looked genuinely worried for the first time since she'd met him. What is it? Clara asked. There was an incident at your mother's apartment. Someone tried to break in this afternoon. Clara's world tilted. Is she okay? Was she hurt? She's fine. The security alarm I had installed worked. Police arrived within minutes and the intruder fled, but Clara. He met her eyes. This wasn't a random break in. The man was carrying a photo of your mother. He was specifically targeting her. Horror and rage flooded through Clara in equal measure. Robert did this. He's going after my mother to get to me. That's my assessment as well. Dominic's voice was gentle but firm. Which is why I'm moving your mother here. Tonight. She'll stay in the guest house with round-the-clock security and medical care. She'll be safe, and you'll be able to see her every day. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Gratitude, fear, and fury all tangled together. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Your mother was targeted because of her connection to you. And you're connected to me. That makes her my responsibility. Dominic placed his hands on Clara's shoulders, his touch warm and grounding. I protect what's mine, Clara. That includes you and everyone you love. Robert Garcia has made a critical mistake. He's shown me exactly how far he's willing to go, which means I now know exactly what kind of response is required. What are you going to do? Clara whispered. What I should have done when he first tried to intimidate my daughter. I'm going to remind him why people don't cross the Santoro family. There was a promise in those words, dark and absolute. Clara should have been frightened. Instead, she felt protected, valued in a way she'd never experienced. Someone powerful was fighting for her, standing between her family and danger. Thank you, she said softly. Dominic's expression softened. You don't need to thank me. You stood up for Megan when no one asked you to, when it could have cost you everything. This is me standing up for you. His hands were still on her shoulders. And suddenly Clara was acutely aware of his proximity, of the intensity in his dark eyes, of the way her heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. Dominic, she began, not knowing what she wanted to say. He seemed to catch himself, stepping back and dropping his hands. I should make arrangements for your mother's move. James will pick her up within the hour. You can come along if you'd like. Yes, please. I need to see her. Make sure she's really okay. Of course, but Clara? He paused at the door. After tonight, things are going to escalate. Robert will retaliate when he realizes his play failed. Stay close to the estate, stay alert, and trust me to handle this. Can you do that? Clara nodded, understanding that she was being asked to have faith in a man whose methods she didn't fully understand, whose world operated by rules she was only beginning to grasp. But she'd already made her choice a week ago when she signed that contract. She was all in now, for better or worse. An hour later, Clara sat in the back of the Mercedes beside her mother, who was alternating between tears of relief and scolding Clara for getting involved in something dangerous. Mija, this is too much. That man, whoever he was, he knew my name, knew I was your mother. He was looking for me specifically. Her mother's voice shook. I could have been hurt or worse, and all because you took this job. All because I stood up for a child, Clara corrected firmly. And Dominic is fixing it, Mama. You're going to be safe. Better than safe. You'll have round-the-clock security, better medical care than we could ever afford. This is good. But at what cost? What are you trading away for this protection? Clara didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. When they arrived at the estate, Dominic was waiting to greet them personally. He helped Clara's mother out of the car with gentle courtesy, introducing himself properly. Mrs. Rios, I'm Dominic Santoro. I apologize for the circumstances bringing you here, but I'm glad we can offer you safety and comfort. Clara's mother studied him with the sharp eyes of someone who'd learned to read people for survival. You're the man my daughter's working for. Yes, ma'am. And I'm grateful for her every day. She's been wonderful with my daughter. And you're going to keep both my girls safe? I am. You have my word. The solemnity in Dominic's voice seemed to satisfy something in her mother because she nodded. The guest house was a separate building on the estate grounds, smaller than the main house, but still luxurious by any normal standard. It had been hastily prepared for Clara's mother's arrival, with medical equipment already set up and a private nurse standing by. As Clara helped her mother settle in, Megan appeared in the doorway, curious and a little shy. Hi, she said softly. Are you Clara's mama? I am, sweetheart. And you must be Megan. Clara has told me so much about you. Megan came closer, studying Clara's mother with interest. Clara looks like you. You have the same eyes. We do, Clara's mother agreed, smiling. And I hear you're quite the artist. Would you like to see my drawings? Megan asked, brightening. I have my sketchbook in the main house. I would love that. As Megan ran off to retrieve her art, Clara's mother caught her daughter's hand. That little girl has been through pain. I can see it in her eyes. But she's healing. And I think you're part of that healing, Mija. I hope so. That man, Dominic, he's dangerous, isn't he? Clara nodded slowly. Yes, but not to us. To us, he's protective, generous, kind. And you care for him. I can see it in how you say his name. Clara felt her cheeks heat. Mama. It's okay to care, Clara. Just be careful. Men like that, they live complicated lives. And women who love them often pay the price. Before Clara could respond, Megan returned with her sketchbook, breaking the moment. But her mother's words echoed in her mind for the rest of the evening. That night, after everyone was settled, Clara stood on the balcony of her suite, looking out at the guest house where a light burned in her mother's window. Security personnel patrolled the grounds, visible now, a reminder of the dangers that necessitated such precautions. This was her life now. Beauty and danger intertwined, protection that came with a price, and feelings she couldn't quite name for a man she shouldn't want. But as Clara watched Dominic's silhouette pass by a window in his third-floor study, still awake and working to keep them all safe, she couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. She'd chosen this path when she defended Megan in that restaurant. Now she just had to see where it led. The following week brought a deceptive calm to the Santoro estate. Clara's mother settled into the guest house with surprising ease, her health improving noticeably with better medical care and reduced stress. Megan visited her daily, bringing drawings and chatter that seemed to brighten both their spirits. It was almost possible to forget the underlying threat, to pretend this was simply their new normal. Almost. Clara noticed the changes even when others might not. The increased security rotations. The way Dominic's phone conversations grew more frequent and tense. The meetings that extended late into the night. Men arrived at odd hours, entering through the side entrance and leaving with grim expressions. Dominic was orchestrating something, preparing for whatever response Robert Garcia's failed attempt on her mother would provoke. On Wednesday afternoon, Clara was helping Megan with her math homework in the kitchen when Dominic emerged from his office, looking more relaxed than he had in days. Papa. Megan abandoned her fractions immediately. Can we go to the art museum this weekend? My class is studying Impressionism, and Miss Rodriguez said the Art Institute has a whole gallery. Dominic glanced at Clara, an unspoken question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. The outing could be made secure with proper planning. I think that's a wonderful idea, Dominic said, ruffling his daughter's hair. We'll make a day of it. Lunch at that Italian place you love, then the museum. Clara, you'll join us. Of course, grazie, Clara said, though something in the way he phrased it, not as an employee accompanying her charge, but as an invitation to join them, made her pulse quicken. Perfect. I'll have security scout the locations beforehand. Dominic pulled out his phone, already making arrangements. We could all use some normalcy, some beauty. That evening, after Megan was asleep, Clara was surprised by a knock on her suite door. She opened it to find Dominic standing there, still in his work clothes but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. "I'm sorry to disturb you," he said, "but I wanted to update you on the situation with Robert Garcia. May I come in?" Clara's heart hammered as she stepped aside, hyper aware that she was wearing yoga pants and an old t shirt, her hair pulled up in a messy bun. This was too informal, too intimate. He'd never come to her suite before. Dominic entered but stayed near the door, maintaining appropriate distance. "I wanted you to hear this from me directly. Robert Garcia has been encouraged to leave Chicago for a while. He's taken a sudden interest in his company's Singapore operations and will be relocating there for the next 6 months." Clara stared at him. "You made him leave the country?" "I had a conversation with some business associates who have interests aligned with mine. They made it clear to Robert that his actions were unacceptable and that continued presence in Chicago would be uncomfortable for him." Dominic's expression was neutral, but Clara could read the satisfaction beneath. "He'll be gone by the end of the week." Just like that, he just agreed to leave? Men like Robert understand leverage, even if they don't understand honor. He was presented with evidence of certain business practices that wouldn't look good if they became public. Tax irregularities, some questionable real estate deals, connections to individuals who aren't quite as legitimate as his public image suggests. He chose to accept a graceful exit rather than face exposure and investigation. Clara should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt a chill at how efficiently Dominic had dismantled a billionaire's life. This was the power she'd only glimpsed before, the ability to move people like chess pieces, to make threats that were never quite spoken but absolutely understood. "You're frightened," Dominic observed quietly. "Of me, of what I'm capable of." "I'm processing," Clara said honestly. "You made a powerful man flee the country in less than a week. That's not normal." "No, it's not, but then nothing about my life is normal." Dominic moved slightly closer, his dark eyes intent on hers. "I won't apologize for protecting you, Clara. For protecting Megan and your mother. Robert targeted your family because of his ego and his need for revenge. He needed to understand there were consequences for that choice. And if he hadn't agreed to leave, what would have happened?" Dominic held her gaze steadily. "Then the consequences would have been more severe. But it didn't come to that. He's not stupid, just arrogant. When faced with the reality of his situation, he made the intelligent choice." Clara sank onto the edge of her couch, suddenly exhausted. "This world you live in, I'm still learning the rules. Learning what's normal and what's dangerous and where the lines are. The most important rule is simple. Family is everything. You protect your own, no matter the cost." Dominic sat in the chair across from her, and his voice softened. "You understand that instinctively? It's why you stood up for Megan, why you've sacrificed for your mother. You already know the rule, you just apply it differently than I do. I don't have the power to make people leave countries." "No, but you have courage, integrity, a willingness to stand up to power when it's being abused. That's a different kind of strength, Clara. One that's rarer and more valuable than you realize." The way he looked at her made Clara's breath catch. There was admiration in his eyes. Yes, but something else, too. Something that made the air between them feel charged, electric. "I should let you rest," Dominic said, standing abruptly as if he'd felt it too, and was deliberately breaking the moment. "We have the museum trip this weekend. Something to look forward to." After he left, Clara sat in the quiet of her suite, her thoughts spinning. She was drawn to Dominic in ways that went beyond gratitude or professional respect. She admired his devotion to Megan, his willingness to protect those he cared about, the glimpses of gentleness beneath his dangerous exterior. But she also recognized the risk in those feelings. Loving a man like Dominic Santoro would be complicated and potentially painful. His world was full of violence and moral ambiguity. But walking away from those feelings seemed impossible now. Saturday arrived bright and unseasonably warm for November. Megan was vibrating with excitement as they prepared for their outing, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on a navy dress with white trim that reminded Clara of the uniform she'd been wearing the night they met. You look beautiful, Principessa, Dominic said when Megan finally emerged. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. His eyes found Clara, taking in her simple black dress and leather jacket. You both do. The drive to downtown Chicago was easy, with James navigating traffic while security followed in a second vehicle. Megan chattered about her art class, about the Monet painting she wanted to see, about how her teacher said she had real talent. Lunch was at a small Italian restaurant in River North, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and basil filling the air. The owner, an older man named Antonio, greeted Dominic like family, kissing both his cheeks and exclaiming over how much Megan had grown. And who is this bellissima? Antonio asked, gesturing to Clara. This is Clara, Megan's nanny, Dominic said. But there was something in his tone that made it sound like more than just an introduction. Ah, finally, someone to bring beauty and order to this man's life, Antonio said with a knowing smile. He works too much, this one. Always business, never pleasure. But I see now why he smiles more lately. Clara felt her cheeks heat while Dominic shot Antonio a look that was half warning, half amusement. The meal was perfect. Pasta that melted in Clara's mouth, rich marinara sauce, fresh bread that Antonio brought himself and insisted they eat while it was still warm. Megan got sauce on her chin and laughed unselfconsciously. Dominic told stories about growing up in the neighborhood, about the trouble he and Antonio's sons used to get into. For a few hours, they were just a family enjoying a meal together. The Art Institute was crowded with weekend visitors, but Dominic had arranged for a private guide who led them through the galleries at Megan's pace. Clara watched as the girl stood transfixed before Monet's water lilies, her head tilted as she studied the brushstrokes. It's like he painted light, Megan whispered. Not just what things look like, but how they feel. That's very perceptive, their guide said, impressed. That's exactly what the Impressionists were trying to do, capture the feeling of a moment. Dominic stood beside Clara, close enough that their arms almost touched. She has her mother's gift for seeing beauty, he said quietly. Elena could look at the most ordinary scene and find something extraordinary in it. You must miss her terribly, as Clara said. Every day. But time has made it different. Less sharp, more like an ache that's always there, but manageable. He glanced at Clara. Megan helped with that. Having to be strong for her, to help her heal, gave me purpose beyond my grief. And now there are other things that bring light back into life. The way he looked at her left no doubt about his meaning. Clara's heart raced. They moved through the galleries, and Clara found herself drawn to a painting of a woman in a garden, surrounded by flowers, her face turned toward the sun. There was something joyful about it, something that spoke of hope and renewal. You like that one, Dominic observed, coming to stand beside her. It feels like possibility, Clara said, like she's standing at the beginning of something good. Then we should get you a print. Something to remind you that good things are possible. Before Clara could protest, Dominic was already heading toward the museum shop. He returned with a framed print of the painting, refusing her attempts to decline the gift. It made you smile, he said simply. That's reason enough. On the drive home, Megan fell asleep against Clara's shoulder, exhausted from the day's excitement. Clara stroked the girl's hair absently, marveling at how natural this felt, this little family unit they'd formed. Thank you for today, Dominic said softly, glancing back at them through the rearview mirror. For making it perfect for her. For making it perfect for all of us. It was my pleasure, truly. When they arrived home, Dominic carried the sleeping Megan up to her room. Clara followed, helping him remove her shoes and tuck her in. As they stood together beside Megan's bed, looking down at her peaceful face, Dominic reached out and took Clara's hand. The touch was electric, sending warmth flooding through her. She looked up at him, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. Clara, he began, but was interrupted by his phone buzzing insistently. He pulled it out, his expression darkening as he read the screen. I need to take this, but we should talk. Soon. There are things I need to say to you. He left, and Clara stood in Megan's room, her hand still tingling from his touch, her heart full of emotions she was afraid to name. Whatever was building between them couldn't be ignored much longer. The question was whether she had the courage to embrace it or the wisdom to step back before she got in too deep. Later that night, Clara was reading in her suite when she heard raised voices from below. She moved to her balcony and saw several cars in the driveway, men in suits entering the house with urgent energy. Something was wrong. She pulled on a robe and ventured downstairs, finding security personnel stationed at various points, their postures tense and alert. One of them, Marco, intercepted her before she could reach Dominic's office. "You should return to your room, Miss Rios. Mr. Santoro is handling a situation." "What kind of situation?" Before Marco could answer, Dominic's office door opened, and he emerged with three other men. His expression was thunderous, more dangerous than Clara had ever seen him. "Get everyone to safe rooms, now," he ordered. "Clara, wake Megan and take her to the panic room behind my study. Your mother, too. Marco will show you." "Dominic, what's happening?" "Robert Garcia didn't leave for Singapore as planned. He hired people to come after my family instead." His voice was ice-cold fury. "We got advance warning, and they won't reach this house, but I'm not taking chances. Get Megan and your mother to safety. I'll come for you when it's clear." Terror flooded through Clara, but she forced herself to stay calm. Megan needed her steady, not panicking. She ran upstairs and gently woke the girl, who was groggy and confused. "Sweetheart, we're going to have an adventure," Clara said, keeping her voice light despite her racing heart. "We're going to Papa's secret room. It'll be like camping." "Is something wrong?" Megan asked, more alert now. "Papa is just being extra careful, but we're safe. I promise." They collected Clara's mother from the guest house. The nurse had already been alerted and had her ready to move. Marco led them through the main house to Dominic's study, where he pressed a hidden panel that revealed a reinforced door. The panic room beyond was surprisingly comfortable, a space designed for extended stays if necessary, with beds, supplies, communications equipment, and its own air system. Clara got Megan and her mother settled, trying to project calm she didn't feel. "Where's Papa?" Megan asked, her voice small. "He's making sure we stay safe. He'll come for us soon." The wait was agonizing. Clara could hear nothing from outside the sealed room. No gunshots, no sounds of struggle. Nothing. The silence was almost worse than noise would have been. She imagined terrible scenarios. Dominic hurt, or worse. Robert's hired men breaching the security. Everything falling apart. "Tell me about the painting you saw today," Clara's mother said to Megan, clearly trying to distract her. "The one by Monet." As Megan described the water lilies, Clara paced, checking her phone obsessively, though it showed no signal in the reinforced room. An hour passed, then two. Her mother and Megan eventually dozed off, exhausted by stress and adrenaline, but Clara remained awake, alert, terrified. Finally, after 3 hours that felt like 3 days, the door opened. Dominic stood there looking tired but unharmed. Relief crashed over Clara so intensely she felt dizzy. "It's over," he said. "Everyone is safe. The threat has been neutralized." Robert's men never made it past the outer perimeter. My security team intercepted them miles from here. They're now having conversations with people who will ensure they face appropriate consequences. His expression was grim. And Robert Garcia is learning that running is no longer an option. He's being dealt with as we speak. Clara didn't ask what "dealt with" meant. Some things she was better off not knowing. "Come," Dominic said, his voice gentler. "Let's get you all back to bed. Tomorrow we'll discuss additional security measures, but tonight you need rest." He carried a still sleeping Megan back to her room while Clara helped her mother to the guest house. When Clara finally returned to her own suite, she found Dominic waiting in her sitting room. "I need to know you're okay," he said. "That was a lot to handle." "I'm okay. Scared, but okay." Clara sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "Is this going to be our life? Threats and panic rooms and men with guns?" No, this was an aberration. One desperate man making catastrophic mistakes. It won't happen again. Dominic sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Robert underestimated who he was dealing with. That mistake cost him everything. Others will learn from his example. What did you do to him? What was necessary? What he forced me to do by threatening my daughter. Dominic's voice hardened. I'm not a good man, Clara. I won't pretend to be. But I'm a man who protects what he loves. Always. Clara knew she should be horrified by the implications in his words. Instead, she felt safe, protected in a way she'd never experienced. Maybe that made her complicit in darkness. Maybe it made her someone she wouldn't have recognized a month ago. Or maybe it just made her human, someone willing to accept protection from a complicated man in a complicated world. Stay, she heard herself say. Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone. Dominic pulled her close and Clara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His arms around her felt like the safest place in the world, even though logic said they should feel like the most dangerous. They sat that way until Clara's breathing deepened and she drifted into sleep. The last thing she was aware of was Dominic lifting her gently, carrying her to her bed, and pulling the covers over her with tender care. You're safe, he whispered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I'll always keep you safe. And despite everything, the violence, the danger, the moral complexity, Clara believed him. The morning after the crisis dawned clear and cold, winter finally asserting itself over Chicago. Clara woke to find a note on her nightstand in Dominic's precise handwriting. Let Megan sleep in. We all need rest. I'm handling the aftermath. You're safe. Duh. She found her mother already awake in the guest house, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, looking remarkably calm for someone who'd spent the previous night in a panic room. You're in love with him, her mother said without preamble when Clara entered. Clara opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. What was the point of lying? Maybe. I don't know. Is that crazy? Probably, but love usually is. Her mother patted the seat beside her. Come, Mija, tell me what you're feeling. Clara sat, and the words poured out. Her admiration for how Dominic cared for Megan, her gratitude for how he'd protected them both, her fear of the violence that surrounded his world, and beneath it all, the undeniable pull she felt toward him. The way her heart raced when he entered a room, the safety she felt in his presence despite the danger he represented. He's dangerous, Mama. He does things, terrible things probably, to protect what he cares about. I should be running in the other direction. And yet you're not. Her mother studied her with those knowing eyes. Your father, he was safe. Predictable. He worked at the factory, came home every night, never raised his voice. And then one day he walked out because safe and predictable wasn't enough for him. He wanted something more exciting, more passionate. He found it with another woman and left us behind. Clara had never heard her mother speak so candidly about her father's abandonment. What I learned from that, her mother continued, is that safety is an illusion. Good men can leave. Dangerous men can stay. What matters is whether someone sees you, values you, chooses you every day. This man, Dominic, he sees you, Clara. I watched him at lunch that day we met. The way he looks at you is how I used to look at your father before he became a stranger. But what if I can't live with the violence, with the moral compromises? Then you leave. But don't leave because you're afraid of happiness, Clara. You've spent your whole life taking care of others, putting yourself last. Maybe it's time to let someone take care of you too, even if he's complicated. Even if it's scary. Clara hugged her mother, drawing strength from her wisdom. When she returned to the main house, she found Megan in the kitchen with Dominic, making pancakes. The girl looked tired but cheerful, chattering about a dream she'd had about flying. Clara! Megan spotted her and immediately rushed over. Papa says we can have a movie day, just us. No school. Can we watch all the Miyazaki films? All of them might be ambitious, Clara said, laughing. But we can certainly start. Dominic caught her eye over Megan's head, and the warmth in his expression made her pulse quicken. Whatever conversation they needed to have was coming. She could feel it building between them like an approaching storm. The day passed in comfortable domesticity. They watched movies curled up on the massive sectional in the den, ate popcorn, and let the tension of the previous night gradually fade. Megan dozed off halfway through the third film, exhausted despite sleeping in. I should put her to bed, Dominic said softly. I'll help. They carried Megan upstairs together, moving in synchronized silence that spoke to how naturally they'd fallen into partnership over the past weeks. Once Megan was tucked in, her stuffed rabbit clutched in one arm, Dominic led Clara to his third floor study, a space she'd never entered before. It was masculine and comfortable, with floor to ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, and windows overlooking the grounds. But what caught Clara's attention was the wall covered in Elena's artwork, beautiful paintings and sketches that captured moments of joy and love and everyday beauty. She was incredible, Clara said softly. She was. And for a long time after she died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part where I felt things deeply, where I could imagine being happy again. Dominic moved to stand beside her, studying his late wife's artwork. I was wrong. He turned to face Clara fully, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. These past weeks with you have shown me that it's possible to move forward without forgetting. That opening your heart again isn't a betrayal, but a tribute to what you've loved and lost. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle despite the calluses on his palm. Clara, I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have fallen, and I need you to know that before you make any decisions about staying or going. Clara's heart hammered. Dominic! Let me finish, please. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I know my world is complicated, dangerous. I know I've done things that would horrify most people, that my hands aren't clean and never will be. I can't offer you a simple, normal life. But what I can offer is absolute devotion, protection, a family with Megan and me, a life where you're valued and cherished and safe, where your mother is cared for and you never have to worry about bills or survival or facing the world alone. I'm falling in love with you too, Clara whispered, the admission feeling like jumping off a cliff. It terrifies me. You terrify me sometimes, but I've never felt safer than when I'm with you. I've never felt more seen or valued. And Megan, God, I love that little girl like she's my own. Then stay, not as an employee, but as part of this family, as mine. Dominic's voice was rough with emotion. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but when you know, and I know I want you in my life, in Megan's life, for as long as you'll have us. Clara's answer was to close the distance between them and kiss him. His arms came around her immediately, pulling her close, and the kiss deepened with a passion that had been building for weeks. It felt like coming home and leaping into the unknown all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes? He asked, a smile in his voice. That's a yes, Clara confirmed. To all of it. To you, to Megan, to this beautiful, complicated, terrifying life you're offering. No regrets? Probably lots of regrets, Clara said honestly, but none about choosing you. They stood wrapped in each other's arms, and Clara felt something settle in her chest, a sense of rightness that transcended logic or caution. This was where she belonged, with this man, with his daughter, in this world that she was learning to navigate. The next morning, Dominic sat Megan down for a conversation. Clara joined them, nervous about how the 8-year-old would react to the news that their relationship had changed. Principessa, Clara and I need to talk to you about something important, Dominic began. Megan looked between them, her expression curious but not worried. Okay. You know that Clara came here to be your nanny, to take care of you, and she's been wonderful at that. But over these past weeks, something else has happened too. Dominic took Clara's hand, the gesture deliberate and meaningful. Clara and I have developed feelings for each other. We care about each other in a special way, and we wanted you to know that, to make sure you're okay with it. Megan was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she smiled, a genuine, bright smile that lit up her whole face. You mean like how Papa loved Mama? She asked. Something like that, yes, Dominic said carefully. Good. I hoped you would. Megan looked at Clara with those perceptive eyes. I told you Papa liked you. I could tell. And you make him happy. He laughs more now, real laughs, not pretend ones. What about you? Clara asked. How do you feel about this? Megan considered the question seriously. I feel good. You're not trying to replace Mama. You're just you. And I love you being here. I love you. The last three words came out shy but sincere. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. Megan launched herself at Clara, hugging her tightly. Over the girl's head, Clara met Dominic's eyes, and the emotion there mirrored her own. Gratitude, love, and hope for the future they were building together. The weeks that followed brought adjustment and joy in equal measure. Clara moved into Dominic's suite, a decision that felt both momentous and natural. They took their time, building their relationship deliberately, making sure Megan felt secure and included in every step. Robert Garcia, Clara learned, had been dealt with definitively. The details were vague, but Dominic assured her the threat was permanently neutralized. She didn't ask for specifics, accepting that some aspects of his world she was better off not knowing. Christmas arrived with the first real snowfall of the season. The estate transformed into something magical, with lights strung through the bare trees and a massive tree in the main hall that Megan insisted they all decorate together. On Christmas morning, Clara woke wrapped in Dominic's arms, still marveling at how drastically her life had changed in just 2 months. She thought about that night at Augustino's, about the split-second decision to defend a little girl she didn't know. That one moment of courage had led her here, to love, to family, to a life she never could have imagined. What are you thinking about? Dominic murmured, his voice rough with sleep. How one decision can change everything, Clara said. How standing up for Megan that night set all of this in motion. Best decision you ever made, Dominic said, pulling her closer. Best thing that ever happened to me. Downstairs, they found Megan already awake, sitting by the Christmas tree in her pajamas, sketching the scene. When she saw them, she jumped up excitedly. Can we open presents now, please? Let's get your grandmother first, Dominic said. She should be here for this too. They gathered in the living room, Dominic, Clara, Megan, and Clara's mother, and exchanged gifts with the easy affection of a real family. Megan gave Clara a portrait she'd drawn, capturing Clara with an artist's eye that saw not just features, but essence. Clara gave Megan a set of professional art supplies she'd been coveting. Dominic gave Clara a necklace that had belonged to his grandmother, a gesture that spoke of permanence and intention. But the biggest surprise came when Dominic handed Clara a small velvet box. This isn't a ring, he said quickly, seeing her expression. Not yet. I know we're taking things slow, being thoughtful about our future, but I wanted you to have something that represents what you mean to me. Inside was a key on a delicate chain. It's the key to this house, Dominic explained. But more than that, it's a symbol. You're not an employee anymore, Clara. You're not a guest. This is your home. You belong here with us for as long as you choose to stay, and I'm hoping that's forever. Clara's vision blurred with tears. Forever sounds perfect. Does that mean you're staying forever? Megan asked, bouncing with excitement. Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying. Megan cheered, and Clara's mother wiped away her own tears, smiling with joy and relief for her daughter's happiness. That afternoon, they had Christmas dinner together, a meal prepared by the estate's chef, but eaten in the informal dining room, with laughter and conversation and the easy comfort of people who loved each other. Clara looked around the table at her new family and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Later, after Megan was asleep and Clara's mother had retired to the guest house, Clara and Dominic stood on the balcony of their suite, watching snow fall gently over the grounds. I never told you what happened to Robert, Dominic said quietly. The final resolution. Clara tensed slightly. Do I want to know? He's alive, if that's what concerns you, but he's living in a very small apartment in Manila, working a middle management job for one of his company's subsidiaries. All his assets were seized in an SEC investigation, legitimate evidence of crimes he actually committed, just brought to light by people who knew where to look. He lost everything. His empire, his reputation, his power. and he'll spend the rest of his life knowing exactly why it happened and who was responsible. That's almost worse than death for someone like him, Clara observed. Exactly. I wanted him to live with the consequences of his choices. Death would have been mercy. This is justice. Dominic pulled Clara close. He tried to hurt my family. He tried to hurt you. That couldn't go unanswered. I should probably be more bothered by that, Clara said, by the ruthlessness of it. But you're not? I'm not. Maybe that makes me complicit in your world. Maybe it changes who I am. But I can't regret seeing someone face consequences for trying to harm people I love. You're becoming one of us, Dominic said, and there was pride in his voice. Understanding the rules, understanding why they matter. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the snow transform the world into something clean and new. Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here: poverty and struggle, her mother's illness, working herself to exhaustion just to survive. And then one night, one act of courage, and everything had changed. I defended a child because it was right, Clara said softly. I didn't know it would lead here. To this life, to you, to a family I never dreamed I could have. Courage often leads to unexpected places, Dominic replied. You just have to be brave enough to follow where it takes you. 6 months later, on a warm June evening, Dominic proposed properly. Not in some elaborate public display, but in Megan's treehouse, the place where their family spent so many happy hours together. Megan was there to witness it, bouncing with barely contained excitement as her father got down on one knee. Clara Rios, you came into our lives like a force of nature, brave and fierce and impossibly kind. You saved my daughter. You saved me. You made us a family again when I'd forgotten what that felt like. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Megan's mother in every way that matters? Yes, Clara said through happy tears. 1,000 times yes. The ring was perfect. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unconventional and beautiful. Just like the life they were building together. They married in September in the garden of the estate, a small ceremony with only the people who mattered most. Megan was the flower girl, walking down the aisle in a navy dress that matched her outfit from that first night. Clara's mother cried happy tears, and when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared felt like a promise fulfilled, a reward for the courage to defend a child, to embrace the unexpected, to love without reservation despite the risks. That night, after the celebration had ended and Megan was asleep, Clara stood with Dominic on the balcony of their suite, the same spot where they'd watched snow fall months before. But now the air was warm, the garden below blooming with late summer flowers. Any regrets? Dominic asked, echoing his question from that first night they'd acknowledged their feelings. Not a single one, Clara said honestly. My life isn't what I expected. It's complicated and sometimes scary and definitely not conventional, but it's mine. We're mine. This family we've built. It's everything I never knew I needed. I love you, Mrs. Santoro. I love you too. They stood wrapped in each other's arms, and Clara reflected on the strange, wonderful journey that had brought her here. She'd walked into Augustino's restaurant 2 months ago, just another struggling waitress with a sick mother and too many bills. She'd walked out with a future she never could have imagined, all because she'd defended a child from a cruel man. All because one mafia boss had seen her courage and valued it more than any credential or background check could measure. All because sometimes the most unlikely moments lead to the most extraordinary outcomes. In the years that followed, Clara would look back on that night as the turning point, the moment when her life split into before and after. Before, she'd been surviving, scraping by, doing what was necessary but never truly living. After, she'd found purpose, love, family, and a place where she belonged. She'd also found something else: the knowledge that courage, once shown, opens doors that fear keeps locked. That defending those who need it matters more than any personal consequence. That sometimes the most dangerous-looking paths lead to the safest harbors. Megan grew up surrounded by love, her father's devotion, Clara's care, her grandmother's wisdom. She became an accomplished artist, studying at prestigious schools, always carrying forward her mother's gift and Clara's influence. And she never forgot the night a brave waitress had stood between her and cruelty, changing all their lives forever. Years later, when Megan had children of her own, she'd tell them the story of how Clara became part of their family, about courage and consequences, about standing up for what's right even when it's hard, about how one moment of bravery can echo through generations. Aunt Clara saved Papa that night, Megan would say. He saved her too, but she was the one who was brave first. She taught us that protecting people matters more than protecting ourselves. That's what family does. And Clara, listening to this story told about her own actions, would smile and hold Dominic's hand, grateful every day for the choice she'd made in a crowded restaurant, the choice to defend a child she didn't know, because that choice had given her everything: a husband who cherished her, a daughter who loved her, a mother whose final years were comfortable and happy, a life full of meaning and purpose and joy. All because one black waitress saw a little girl in danger and decided that money, power, and personal safety mattered less than doing what was right. That was the real story. Not about a mafia boss who stunned everyone with his generosity, though he had been generous beyond measure. The real story was about Clara Rios, who'd always been brave enough to stand up for others, who'd finally found people willing to stand up for her in return. And they all lived complicated, imperfect, beautiful lives together. Not happily ever after in the fairy tale sense, but happily enough in the way that real families do, with challenges and triumphs, struggles and celebrations, but always with love at the center of it all. The kind of love that starts with courage and grows into something that changes everything. What would you do if you found yourself caring for someone whose world was so different from your own? Would you embrace the risk or protect your heart? Share it in the comments section and don't forget to like and subscribe for thrilling stories like this.